So, I've been thinking about something lately, and I honestly cannot stop noticing how many women slowly disappear from their own lives without even realizing that it's happening to them. I don't think that anyone wakes up one morning and decides, you know what, I am going to lose myself today. No, I don't think it happens like that. It happens in tiny moments. A moment where something bothers you, but you convince yourself that it's not worth bringing up. Or a moment where someone hurts your feelings, but you immediately think, maybe I'm just being too sensitive. Or perhaps a moment where you change your plans because someone else needed you in that moment, even though you were really looking forward to that time with yourself. And at that time, none of those things feel big enough to matter. And one day, you find yourself feeling disconnected from a person that you actually know better than anyone, yourself. I personally used to think that losing yourself meant becoming someone you're not. Like waking up one day and realizing that you've completely changed. But now I don't think that it happens so dramatically. I think it happens when you start choosing peace in a situation over honesty. When keeping things comfortable becomes more important than being yourself. When you start asking, will they be upset? Before asking, how do I actually feel about this? And the scary part is, it can look like being a good person. Because a lot of us were taught that being loving means being understanding, being patient, being the person who does not create unnecessary problems, being easy to love. But somewhere along the way, we forget that being kind to other people should not require us to be unkind to ourselves. Now tell me, have you ever had that moment where someone says something and immediately your body reacts? Like you feel that little heaviness in your chest. You know that something just did not sit right with you. But before you even process it, your brain jumps in. It tells you things like, don't make it awkward, it's probably not a big deal, they did not mean it like that, or just let it go. And maybe sometimes letting things go is healthy, but sometimes we are not letting things go. We are instead abandoning ourselves because we know something hurt. We know something crossed a line. We know it in our heart that something just does not feel right. But we choose to silence that feeling because acknowledging it means that we might have to do something about it. We might have to have a difficult conversation with someone. And in that process, we might end up disappointing someone because this might take admitting that something is not working anymore. And I think that is exactly where a lot of us get stuck. Not because we don't know what we want, but because we are scared of what happens when we finally choose ourselves. I understand it sometimes feels uncomfortable to choose yourself when you have spent years proving that you're easy to be around. When you've spent years making sure that everyone else is okay. When you've spent years being the person who understands everyone, but never asks if anyone understands you. And can we, please, for a moment, talk about how we explain ourselves way too much? Because, why do we really do that? Why? I don't understand. I know I've been that person too, and I can occasionally still be that person, but why? Someone asks us for a favor, and instead of simply saying no, we feel like we need to write them a whole explanation. It goes like, I'm so sorry, I would love to, but I have this thing, and then this happened, and maybe next week. Why? Why do we feel like our answer needs a presentation before it's allowed to be accepted? Why does no feel like something we need to apologize for? I think a lot of women have this fear that if we stop being constantly available or constantly understanding or constantly accommodating, people will stop choosing us. But let me tell you the truth. The people who love the version of you that never needs anything, never says no, and never has boundaries, don't actually love all of you. They simply love the access that they have to you. And I know that's a hard thing to sit with. Because sometimes the hardest person to disappoint is not someone else. It's the version of you who learned that being needed was the same thing as being loved. The version of you who thought if you could just be better, easier, calmer, more understanding, then nobody would leave. But you know what I've realized? You should not have to abandon yourself to keep someone else close. You should not have to shrink your feelings to make someone else feel more comfortable. You should not have to constantly prove that you're worth staying for. The right people don't need you to disappear so they can love you. They actually want to meet you, the real you. The one who has opinions, the one who knows her boundaries, the one who can openly say that actually that hurt my feelings, the person who takes up space, the one who does not always have the perfect response, because you can mess up sometimes. You're only human. It's okay. And maybe becoming yourself again is not about finding some completely new version of you. Maybe it's about returning to the person you were before you decided that you are going to edit yourself for everyone else around you. Before you started questioning every feeling that you have. Before you started asking for permission to need things. Before you became so focused on being loved that you forgot to love yourself. Yeah, I think a lot of us are not looking for a new life. We're just looking for ourselves again. And maybe the first step here is just noticing. Trying to notice the moments where you ignore yourself. Noticing the moments where you make yourself smaller. Noticing the moments where you choose being accepted over being real, being authentic, being who you truly are. Because every time you choose yourself in those tiny moments, you start rebuilding trust with yourself. And maybe that's where everything changes for you. It does not have to be very dramatic, but in these little moments where you finally say, actually, I think I matter too. And it's never talked about enough. Coming back to yourself can feel lonely at first. Because the moment you stop abandoning yourself, people will notice. The moment when you stop saying yes to everything, when you actually want to say no and you do say no, some people will call you different. The moment you stop explaining yourself, some people will say that you have changed. And maybe you have changed. Maybe you stopped being that person whose priority was keeping everyone else comfortable. Maybe healing is not becoming someone new. Maybe healing is finally giving yourself permission to be the person you've always been. The person you were before you learned to question your own feelings. Before you learned that being loved meant being easy. And I think that is the biggest shift. Realizing that the relationship that you have with yourself is the one relationship you will carry into every room, every friendship, every partnership, every single chapter of your life. So maybe today, instead of asking, how do I become someone people will choose? It's time you ask yourself, when was the last time I chose myself? Because maybe the version of you that you've been looking for isn't gone. Maybe she has been waiting for you to come back to her. And it's one decision away to step into that version, to meet her again by choosing yourself in the little moments where you have been choosing other people, prioritizing other people's needs and comfort. So I hope, I wish, I pray that this message reaches to everyone who has been feeling stuck in their life, who has been abandoning themselves without even realizing what they truly are doing. Because this is not the way to live. I think there's so much more to you as a human being, as a woman, as a person that you have not even explored because you are always trying to keep others happy. And it's not a bad thing necessarily. You can still prioritize people, but not when you can't even be yourself. Because at the end of the day, this is your life. You were supposed to live a different life than other people, even if it means living a life on your own terms, and that will look different. So take a deep breath with me and just remind yourself of the person you were trying to be, of the person who you were before you started placing so much importance on other people, other situations, your life circumstances. They're always gonna stay. Okay, but how do you show up in those situations is what life is all about. So this is all I have for you. Thank you so much for being here. Sending you all so much love and light. I'll see you in the next video.